The Dragon Quest series is one of the most influential series when it comes to RPGs in Japan, and one of the most popular and influential entries of the series is Dragon Quest III. Originally released in Japan in 1988 for the Famicom and in the US as Dragon Warrior 3 in 1992 for the NES, the reason for the name change was to avoid a trademark issue of a tabletop RPG known as Dragon Quest. Dragon Quest III was so popular in Japan that kids were pulled up for skipping school to buy it. The game also gave birth to the urban rumour that the Japanese government declared that future Dragon Quest games were not allowed to be released on weekdays. While the game went on to be a bestseller in Japan with 3.8 million copies sold in 1988, it didn't do so well in the US as the Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis or Mega Drive in other regions were in full swing. The game received several remakes, including one for the Super Famicom which was never released outside of Japan and got a fan translation, a Game Boy Color version which did get a Western release, as well as mobile, 3DS, PS4 which were Japan only, Switch and Android/iOS versions. Today we'll be looking at the new HD 2D remake of the game, sporting a similar visual style popularised by Octopath Traveler and used in games such as Triangle Strategy and Star Ocean The Second Story R. There will be late game footage used out of context, but I will try to keep the story spoiler free. Dragon Quest III has you play the role of the child of the great hero Ortega who hails from Aliahan. At the start of the game you take a test that will establish your character's personality, which in turn affects how their stats will grow as they level up. Once the test is over, your character awakens on their 16th birthday and is escorted to the castle by their mother to see the king and to start on their adventure to destroy the Archfiend Baramos, a task that not even the great Ortega was able to complete as he was last seen falling into a volcano while fighting one of his minions. Your character is given some money and basic equipment and you're off to recruit some party members and begin your journey. Dragon Quest III marked the conclusion of the Roto trilogy, known as Erdrick in the US, and had mechanics and features which greatly expanded on what the first two Dragon Quest games offered. But how well does the HD 2D remake hold up? Is it still strong today, or is it a relic of the past? More importantly, is this game any good? Find out in The Good. Over the years, as Dragon Quest III got remade and re-released, new features and mechanics were added to the game, and this remake is no different. Though not all of these features are in it, which we'll talk about later. The game features voice acting with the choice of Japanese or English voices. While it's not entirely voiced, important scenes and events are voiced, as well as when characters attack and take damage. The game expands on its story, showing you scenes of Ortega's original journey. This was covered briefly by the opening scene of the fight at the volcano, introduced in the NES US version, and the expanded intro of the game from the Super Famicom onwards. But the details are more fleshed out in the HD 2D remake. While you can't change the appearance of the character you have selected at the start, the game does allow you to change the basic appearance of your party members between different looks as well as hair colour, which I think is a welcome change. The game also introduces a new class for the remake with the Monster Wrangler, which in turn ties into another mechanic the HD 2D remake introduced, or well, expanded on: the Monster Arena. While the Monster Arena has been around since the original Famicom NES release, the HD 2D remake changes how it works. Traditionally, the arena would have you place bets on which monster would be the last one standing in a fight. In the HD 2D remake, you can find monsters around the world whom you can recruit to fight in the arena with you as their handler in various tournaments. These monsters can be found in towns or locations of interest, and they can either appear during the day, at sunset, or at night. Sometimes you may need to use an item or an ability in order to approach the monster without scaring them off. Or if you have a Monster Wrangler in the party, you can just rock up to them as is to recruit them. As you recruit more monsters, your Monster Wrangler will learn new skills and get stronger, and will go from subpar to a force to be reckoned with, so the investment I found was well worth it in the long run. The game also introduces a number of quality of life updates such as difficulty modes for the game, the ability to speed up battles, auto battling and whether you want your party members to be controlled by you or not, quest markers and reminders of what to do next, and most importantly, the ability to use Chimera Wings or the zoom spell to warp to a place that you had visited while inside. Previously in other Dragon Quest games, if you tried to do this, you would comically hit your head on the ceiling, forcing you to go outside to do this. Being able to warp out inside has become very handy, especially if your party is hurting and you need to really get out of there. The game also has an autosave feature just in case you ever forget to save to keep you from potentially losing hours of progress. Making the game more accessible was definitely the best way to go, and it's a really good way to get people into the series, especially given that Dragon Quest III is the one I usually recommend to people. Visually, the game is an absolute treat on the eyes. As someone who has played through Dragon Quest III multiple times, it was nice to see how all the locations in the game looked visually at different times of the day. Enemy animations looked great, and they went to the extra effort of making sure the characters are holding the weapons you equip them with, which is a neat little detail. Having the points of interest available to explore really fleshes out the world, and I enjoyed going out of my way to find them in order to get items or new monster companions. The game also has sparkling spots in the overworld which can give you much needed items for your journey or to sell for money, which is welcome too. The art style stays mostly faithful to the late Akira Toriyama of Dragon Ball fame, and while some argue that some of the characters have had unnecessary changes made to their design, it's not something that drastically alters how the game will play or its mechanics. The game still retains the charm that Dragon Quest is well known for. Of course, let's not forget the game's music. The music for the game was originally composed by the late Koichi Sugiyama, and for this release, we get a new recording of the symphonic version of the game's soundtrack, which sounds really good. Adventure, the overworld theme of Dragon Quest III, is one of my favourite tunes from the series, and I never get sick of listening to it over and over again, and this new recording of it and other tunes works wonders to setting the atmosphere and tone of the game, even if adventure keeps getting interrupted because I enter battle or a town. The game even has day and night versions of the town and castle themes, which, while isn't new, is still a really nice touch. The game's soundtrack is absolutely amazing, and I definitely applaud the re-recording of the symphonic version to breathe some fresh air into the game. However, even a game as good as Dragon Quest III has its faults, so let's look at what didn't work so good in the bad. One thing that hasn't changed much from the original game is its encounter rate. The game has a pretty high encounter rate, and while this can benefit you by rewarding you with well-deserved experience points, in harder difficulties where enemies hit harder and give you less experience, it does start making things a bit of a chore. I played through the game on Dragon Quest mode, which is the standard difficulty, and while it's good to get those levels up when you can, the constant encounters can be a bit of a slog. The game has metal slimes and liquid metal slimes which will give you a lot of experience, but finding them, hoping they don't run off on you, and beating them is a different story if you don't know where to look or how to deal with them. Thankfully, you do get skills and items to help avoid encounters, however it does not always remove them entirely, and if there are strong enough enemies in the area, you'll still run into them. Having grown up on these sorts of games, it may not be as big of an issue for me, but it can certainly annoy or put off others. Also, whatever happened to the battle visuals shown in the reveal trailer? I think the UI and camera angles worked much better than what we got, but the final result was fine, it just could have been better. The game remains faithful to Dragon Quest III's story. I think it might even be faithful to a fault. While Dragon Quest III's story doesn't have quite the depth of later games and modern RPGs, I still found the story to be enjoyable. While the more fleshed out snippets of Ortega's journey is a welcome addition, I feel the game could have benefited more from having the main character speak during certain situations, or if you want to keep the main character a blank slate and silent, have the party members voice their opinions based on their personality. Doesn't even need to be voiced either. While there are a couple of moments where the party members do say something, it's very little and very far between, and usually it's the character in formation directly after the main character. I feel that this would breathe some life into the party, and even provide some more context and intrigue throughout certain events in the game. On the other hand, there are a couple of story beats in the game that still stands out, in a positive way, to this very day, and still makes the story very memorable, and they have, of course, been left untouched. The last one is more of a personal thing, but while the remakes introduced new features and mechanics, it took one I liked away. I missed the Pachisi tracks. This was a minigame that was originally introduced with the Super Famicom version of the game, where you would spend tickets that you would find to traverse a track in a board game-like fashion by throwing a die. You could find treasure, battle monsters, and buy items. You had a certain number of rolls to complete the track, and this can go up or down depending on what square you land on. The game also notoriously has you falling out of the track if you land on a trapdoor space, requiring you to normally find or spend another ticket to try again. If you do complete the track, you get a reward at the end. This was not a make or break in terms of me playing the HD 2D remake, but I would have liked for it to have been included. I did like the changes to the monster arena, so I wasn't too fussed about it in the end. I think I've talked enough here, so let's wrap things up with the opinion. The HD 2D remake of Dragon Quest III is one of the best remakes of a game I've played. It certainly breathes new life to a classic entry in the series with its visuals, and I think the style should be used for the Zenithian trilogy, which is Dragon Quest 4, 5 and 6, since we'll soon be seeing the HD 2D remake of Dragon Quest 1 and 2. The new mechanics around the monster arena and the customization of party members I welcomed, and the soundtrack being a new recording of the symphonic version was a really nice touch, and these all add to the charm of the game. It is a little too faithful to a fault where the original story's depth shows its age, the encounter rate can be pretty tough at times, as well as the removal of the Pachisi tracks, but I thoroughly enjoyed my time with the Dragon Quest III HD 2D remake. Dragon Quest III is still one of my favourite entries in the series, and this remake is a great way to introduce new people to the series or the older games. The quality of life changes makes it so much more accessible. If you're big on JRPGs and haven't tried it already, give it a go. Dragon Quest is a heavy hitter in the genre, and this game shows it's still got it. So with that, it's time for my rating. I would give the HD 2D remake of Dragon Quest III a liquid metal slime out of 10. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next Infinite Backlog review. If you enjoyed today's review, feel free to check out some of our other videos and subscribe for more. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram and our Facebook page. Once again, thank you for watching.